News of the Times. Murder in the Woods. The Forgotten Case of the Wigwam Girl. Welcome to News of the Times. In this deeply haunting and extraordinary case from wartime Britain, we bring you the tragic story of Joan Pearl Wolfe, forever remembered as the Wigwam Girl. Roaming the countryside in 1940s Surrey, living rough in makeshift bush shacks near a Canadian army camp, her partially buried body was discovered by chance on Hankley Common, setting off one of the most sensational murder trials of the era. At the centre, Auguste Sangret, a French Indian soldier in the Canadian forces, accused of killing the young woman he once promised to marry. With over 40 witnesses, love letters, forensic breakthroughs, and a mother's heart-wrenching pleas, the case captivated the press. From the lonely wigwams to the courtrooms at Surrey Assizes, this is a tragic tale of young love, betrayal, and a justice system grappling with the shadowy uncertainties of war. And in today's end of episode further particular segment, we momentarily step away from the tragic shadows of Hankley Common to visit the lighter, stranger corners of the British courtroom in 1900, where humour, sharp wit, and the occasional verbal jab could brighten even the darkest proceedings. From the archives of the Hampshire Telegraph, a moment of levity from the bench. Now, if the idea of stepping cautiously into shadowy woods, stumbling across a hastily buried secret, and uncovering the mournful remnants of a forgotten life sounds like your idea of a well-spent evening, then please, don't delay, take up your metaphorical torch or actual flashlight, we're not judging, and prepare to wade into a case both tragic and twisted. But before you vanish into the underbrush of murder and mystery, do consider liking, subscribing, or sharing this episode with that curious neighbour who smells faintly of mothballs and knows far too much about Victorian embalming practices. You know the one. Each click bewilders the algorithm, bewilders it to the point of existential crisis. And frankly, we consider that a public service. And now, we begin this strange and sorrowful tale. Background. Joan Pearl Wolfe. Joan Pearl Wolfe was just 19 when her short, troubled life came to a tragic end on a windswept common in wartime Surrey. Born in Tunbridge Wells on March the 11th, 1923, to master watchmaker Charles Wolfe and his wife Edith, Joan's early life were likely shaped by a sense of loss. Her father passed away and her mother later remarried. In her mid-teens, Joan was already slipping through the cracks. At 16 and a half, she began running away from home, often defying her mother's appeals to return to a safer, more stable life. Described in press reports as an attractive blonde, Joan was about 5 feet 4 inches tall, with short, fair, Eton cropped hair and uneven front teeth, one slightly protruding. Her quiet manner and soft speech gave her a fragile presence. She lived rough in makeshift shelters, wigwams constructed from boughs and brushwood, near a Canadian Army encampment. To some, it was the life of a wayward girl, but Joan seemed to be searching for stability in an unstable world. Private Auguste Sangret. Private Auguste Sangret was 28 years old at the time of the crime, a soldier in the Canadian Army stationed in wartime Surrey. Described repeatedly in press reports as a French Indian, Sangret was said to have undoubtedly got Red Indian blood in him, a detail that the 1940s media fixated upon, casting him as both exotic and unknowable. His background lent him an air of mystery, something that may have drawn Joan Wolfe to him, even as it made others wary. Physically, Sangret was of medium build with a dark complexion, and his behaviour both during and after the murder investigation suggested a quiet, reserved man, perhaps even calculating. At his army education class, his instructor described him as a quiet and model student, someone who had arrived virtually illiterate but made marked progress. He was known to carry a jackknife and was later linked to a wooden stake, both alleged to have been used in the killing. The crime and discovery. It was October the 7th, 1942, when two men walking on Hankley Common near Thursley in Surrey made a gruesome discovery that would ignite one of the most sensational murder cases of the war years. The area, known for its isolation and scrubland terrain, was a quiet stretch of military training ground, a place of windswept heath, sand, and shadowed corpses. Once a popular cricketing field, it had become sparsely used during wartime, visited mostly by soldiers or those passing through its desolate tracks. That day, as the two men made their way across the common, something in the ground caught their eye. A human hand, protruding from a shallow mound of earth and sand. Authorities were immediately called to the scene, and as they dug, they unearthed the partially buried remains of a young woman. The body had been hastily covered, with little effort to disguise it from the natural world. A makeshift grave, unmarked, silent until now. As the investigation unfolded, police discovered not far from the burial site two roughly constructed wigwams, fashioned from boughs and leaves. These ramshackle shelters would later become central to the story, as it emerged that the victim, Joan Pearl Wolfe, had been living there on and off with a Canadian soldier. To locals, it was a lonely spot, eerie even in daylight. To Joan, it may have seemed like a place of refuge. To someone else, it became the perfect place to hide a body. From the Daily Mirror, the 17th of October 1942. Girl dead on Common identified. The woman found dead 10 days ago on Hankley Common in Thursley Green, Surrey, was last night identified as Joan Pearl Wolfe, 19. She had been roaming the countryside for some months. Police are anxious to find a 3/4 length wool swagger coat and a white navy check, no buttons, self-bound on edges, with full-length loose-fitting sleeves and two outside patch pockets. The check squares were 1 to 1.5 inches in square. The coat is unlined. They are also looking for a woman's handbag, about 9 inches long by 6 inches wide, of shiny black glazed material with the usual metal snap fastener on top. It contains a compact and the usual woman's accessories. The coat and bag may have been found abandoned near Thursley. In the weeks following the grim discovery on Hankley Common, investigators worked quietly but tirelessly behind the scenes. The public, meanwhile, had heard little more than a young woman's body, now identified as Joan Pearl Wolfe, had been unearthed from a lonely stretch of common land, and that personal items, including a coat, a handbag, were still missing. But while the headlines faded from view, forensic experts and detectives pressed on, combining the isolated terrain and piecing together Joan's final days. Then, nearly 6 weeks later, a breakthrough came, not from a witness or confession, but from the methodical work of science. A report from London's Guy's Hospital delivered a chilling verdict. Joan's death was no accident. From the Daily Mirror, the 30th of November 1942, Wigwam Girl, murder proof. After 6 weeks of intricate work carried out behind locked doors at a London hospital, scientists have completed a piece of medical detection which may send a man to the scaffold. They have forwarded a report to Scotland Yard proving conclusively that Joan Pearl Wolfe, the Wigwam Girl, whose body was found buried on a Surrey common, did not die by accident. Now, after a brilliant scientific work at Guy's Hospital, Chief Inspector Greenough is in possession of a pathologist's report that is expected to end the case within a few days. Already, they are searching for a man who lived in the district for some time. The dead girl was found buried on Thursley Common near Godalming and was not discovered until an armoured vehicle disturbed a pile of sand and earth, revealing the grave. When the police searched the district for a weapon, they found 2 roughly constructed wigwams where she had lived and entertained soldiers stationed in the district. Men with whom she had lived were traced and questioned by the police without result. Joan Wolfe, attractive blonde, lived at Tunbridge Wells in Kent. Just days after forensic experts at Guy's Hospital confirmed that Joan Wolfe's death was murder, the investigation reached a dramatic turning point. With the science now pointing unequivocally to foul play, police intensified their efforts and at last their attention narrowed. A man known to have lived among the wigwams on the common, a soldier once seen at Joan's side, was now at the centre of their inquiry. And on a cold Sunday in Surrey, the case broke wide open. From the Daily Mirror, the 7th of December 1942, soldier on Wigwam Girl charge. Private Auguste Sangret, 28, Canadian soldier, was arrested at Godalming in Surrey yesterday and charged with the murder of Joan Pearl Wolfe, 19, the Wigwam Girl of Hankley Common, Thursley, near Godalming. He will appear in court this morning. The girl's body, in an advanced stage of decomposition, was found partially buried in the sand on Hankley Common exactly 2 months ago. The discovery was made by soldiers at a beauty spot known as the Lion's Mouth, a favourite place with picnic parties. Story pieced together. Detectives pieced together a strange story of a girl living in a wigwam in the heart of the lonely Surrey woods. Several days passed before they announced the finding of the body, and later in October the girl was identified as the daughter of Mrs. Watts of Goods Station Road, Tunbridge Wells in Kent. Chief Inspector Greenough of Scotland Yard, who had led the investigations, was present at Godalming Police Station yesterday when Sangret was charged by Superintendent Webb of the Surrey Police, who made the arrest. Just days after the arrest of Private Auguste Sangret, the case continued to unfold rapidly. Police interest intensified as details emerged of the young soldier's connection to Joan Pearl Wolfe and their shared life in the makeshift shelters of Hankley Common. The initial court proceedings offered the first glimpse of the evidence being assembled and of the man now facing the most serious charge of all. From the Surrey Advertiser, the 12th of December 1942, murder charge against a soldier. A development in the mystery of the death of Joan Pearl Wolfe, aged 19, whose partially decomposed body was found on October the 7th, half buried in sand on Hankley Common between Thursley and Elstead, was the arrest on Sunday of a Canadian soldier, Private Auguste Sangret, aged 28. Sangret, a man of medium height but powerful build, with black hair and a rather dark complexion, was brought before Mr. J. H. Wenham, a county magistrate, at a special court at Godalming Police Station on Monday, charged with the murder of the girl during the month of September. Among those present was Chief Inspector E. Greenough of Scotland Yard, who has been conducting investigations in collaboration with Superintendent R. Webb of the Surrey Constabulary and an officer of the Canadian Army. When the charge had been read, the magistrate asked whether Sangret understood English. Yes, perfectly, replied Superintendent Webb. In evidence, Superintendent Webb said that when charged at Godalming Police Station on Sunday with the murder, Sangret replied, "No, sir, I did not do it. No, sir, I guess somebody did it, and I shall have to take the rap." Asked by the magistrate if he wished to question the superintendent on his evidence, the accused said, "How can they prove I've done it?" With Private Auguste Sangret now formally charged and the public stunned by the strange and sorrowful story unfolding from the remote woods of Hankley Common, attention turned next to the official inquest. The goal was simple, yet crucial: to establish beyond all doubts the identity of the young woman whose remains had been unearthed in the sand. But the proceedings would also begin to pull together the threads of Joan Wolfe's final weeks, her movements, her belongings, and her interactions with both the authorities and those around her. What emerged was a portrait of a young woman both vulnerable and determined, and of a man whose denials would soon be weighed against mounting forensic and circumstantial evidence. From the Surrey Advertiser, the 9th of January 1943, Hankley Common murder charge, inquest evidence establishes girl's identity. The police officer's story of interview in August. Some interesting facts concerning the 19-year-old girl, Joan Pearl Wolfe, for whose alleged murder at Hankley Common Thursday a Canadian soldier has been charged, were revealed at the inquest, which was opened at Godalming on Wednesday. After several witnesses had given evidence, the coroner asked the jury to place on record their verdict as to the identity of the dead woman. The jury came to the unanimous decision that she was Joan Pearl Wolfe. Finding the body. The first witness was Superintendent R. Webb of Godalming, who said that on October the 7th last, he went to Hankley Common on Thursday, where at a spot about 400 yards east of the Elstead Church Road, he saw protruding from a mound a right forearm and a left calf. He made one or two excavations in the vicinity of the head and left foot, and satisfied himself it was a human body, in all probability buried face downward. On the following day, he again visited the spot in company with Dr. Eric Gardner and Dr. Keith Simpson. The body was then seen to be the body apparently of a female, dressed in a green and white floral patterned dress and blue and red ring stockings, which had apparently been pulled down, giving the impression that this had been caused through the body having been dragged along the ground. There were no shoes on the body, which was conveyed to Guy's Hospital in London, and the witness again saw the body at the mortuary on October the 10th, when Dr. Gardiner removed from it the green and white dress produced, with a lace-edged collar, a coloured handkerchief, and articles of underclothing. Interview last year. The superintendent then revealed that on August 23rd last year, a girl named Joan Pearl Wolfe was brought to Godalming Police Station by P.C. Halloran and a P.C. Bradley, and witness had nearly an hour's conversation with her. She was in a very dirty condition, and he made arrangements with her consent for her to be admitted to Warren Road Hospital, and he produced in court 2 photographs which he said were of the girl Joan Pearl Wolfe, whom he saw on August the 23rd. During the conversation he had with her on that date, he was able to study her. She was well spoken, very quiet, and had rather uneven teeth. The 2 centre ones appeared to protrude a little and overlap. She had short, fair, bobbed hair, or more Eton cropped than bobbed. She was about 20 years of age and about 5'4" in height. At that time she was also wearing a rosary and a crucifix, similar to the ones now produced. He had no doubt whatever that the dress produced was the one she was wearing when he saw her at the police station. Evidence of mother. The next witness was the dead girl's mother, Mrs. Edith Mary Watts, of 72 Goods Station Road, Tunbridge Wells. She is my daughter, Joan Pearl Wolfe, was her reply to the question whether she was able to identify photographs handed to her by the police. The girl's father, now dead, was Charles Frederick Wolfe, a master watchmaker, and since his death, the witness had married again. Joan had been away from home at Tunbridge Wells more than once without the witness's consent. She spoke of her daughter's life. She was in a laundry for a short time and then worked as a storekeeper at a garage at Tunbridge Wells. Her height was about 5'4", and she had uneven front teeth. One of the photographs produced was taken outside the witness's house about 2 years ago, showing a crucifix. Witness said it was similar to the worn by Joan. In reply to Mr. Method, witness said her daughter was not a Roman Catholic. She was definitely Church of England. Medical testimony. Dr. Eric Gardner, pathologist, gave evidence only which would assist in establishing the identity of the girl's unrecognizable body, from which all the skin had disappeared through decomposition. From a reconstruction of the body he made, the height of the girl being 5'4" and her age around 20 years. When he saw the body on October the 9th, she had been dead about 5 weeks, probably less. In reply to the jury, Dr. Gardner said the left central tooth of the upper jaw was missing, having been broken at the root. The right central tooth was a little protruding and bore a mark where it evidently edged the other central tooth. As the inquest formally confirmed the identity of Joan Pearl Wolfe, investigators now turned their focus to the emotional and material traces that she had left behind. Her voice, once only a name in a file, began to echo more clearly through letters recovered from her time in hospital. These personal notes, written with quiet vulnerability and desperate hope, would soon play a central role in the growing case against Private Auguste Sangret. With the investigation tightening and the man at the centre of it now behind bars, the story entered a more intimate phase, one of love letters, broken promises, and a girl who thought a wedding was just days away. From the Daily Mirror, the 13th of January 1943, love note of Wigwam Girl to accused soldier. Private letters written from hospital by 19-year-old Joan Pearl Wolfe, the Wigwam Girl, to her French-Canadian lover, who was stationed at Guildford, were recovered yesterday when Private Sangret of the Canadian Forces was charged with her murder. The body of the girl was found buried in sand at Hankley Common in Surrey. For nearly a month, Wolfe had been sleeping rough and had slept in bush shacks or wigwams that had been built on the common adjoining his camp. Wolfe was a wayward child, said Mr. Paling, and ran away from home several times. She was seen frequently in the company of Canadian soldiers, and it was obvious she had been sleeping rough. Sangret had told his commanding officer he wanted to marry the girl. She wore her nails quite short and her hair quite short, and around her neck was a chain with a crucifix. On September the 13th, Sangret and the girl were seen near Wickley Park, that being the last time Joan was seen alive. Sangret could not write. He asked a man to write a letter for him, couched in love terms to a woman in Glasgow. The soldier asked, "What will Joan think?" Sangret replied, "She will never know." Counsel read a letter in which the girl asked Sangret to visit her in hospital. It ran, "I'm pretty sure we are going to have a tiny wee one. I would not blame you one little bit if you didn't want to marry me, because I am really too young and old-fashioned to be married. I regret what we did because it was wicked. I hope God forgives me. Remember, I was brought up very strict. We were taught that a baby before you are married is a sin." In another letter, the girl wrote, "Darling, I will be all dressed up to get married. I'm asking Mother to come and see me because the officer told me I have to get her consent. I hope we shall be married very soon because of the baby and because I love you the more than anything. I will never regret what we have done. We have had some good laughs and tears too. Oh, the smell of burning wood, the loveliest smell in the world. I missed you very much, darling, last night. It was ever so lonely. I have faith in God, and I am praying to him every day to look after you. I am sure that whatever happens, it will be for the best, because he knows how much we love one another. Do not forget, whatever happens, I will always love you and be true to you." With Joan's identity now tragically confirmed and her heartfelt letters read aloud in court, attention turned firmly toward the man accused of her murder. The evidence was mounting, emotional, circumstantial, and increasingly forensic, and yet Sangret continued to deny all involvement. As the preliminary hearings continued, prosecutors meticulously laid out the timeline of Joan's final weeks, her attempts to secure a future with the man she believed would become her husband, and his increasingly evasive behaviour. By late January, the case had gathered enough momentum to take the next inevitable step, the formal commitment of Auguste Sangret to stand trial for murder. As Private Auguste Sangret stood formally committing to trial at Surrey Assizes for the murder of Joan Wolfe, the Crown laid out its mounting case. Over 50 witnesses were heard painting a vivid and complex portrayal of Sangret's relationship with the Wigwam Girl. Joan's mother gave a moving testimony revealing a history of family tension and pleading letters urging her daughter to reform. "When I'm dead," she had once written, "you will wish you had been a better girl." Hospital staff and local acquaintances recalled Joan's brief stays and her associations with Canadian soldiers. Yet it was Sangret who stood accused. Witnesses described seeing him and Joan together in makeshift shelters and at a cricket pavilion in the days leading up to her disappearance. Sangret himself was portrayed as both quiet and illiterate, a man who reportedly relied on others to pen love letters for him. One such letter, written by Joan from hospital, declared her pregnancy and pleaded for marriage. Another soldier recounted Sangret's concern when Joan went missing, claiming he didn't want to be mixed up in it. Physical evidence also emerged. Joan was last seen with a jackknife and a water bottle, both of which were linked back to Sangret. And perhaps the most haunting, a wall of the cricket pavilion bore a poetic inscription: Private Auguste Sangret, Joan Wolfe, now Mrs. Sangret. A romantic fantasy never realized. As the case moved towards trial, it was clear the prosecution's foundation rested on circumstantial threads: love, jealousy, betrayal, and ultimately violence in the shadows of the Surrey woods. From the Daily Mirror, the 26th of February, 1943, death blow demonstrated on a skull. In the dock at Surrey Assizes was Private Auguste Sangret, a 29-year-old Canadian soldier who pleaded not guilty to the murder of Joan Wolfe, 19, with whom he is said to have lived in wigwams made of boughs and leaves on Thursley in Surrey. The pathologist, Dr. Simpson, also demonstrated with a clasp knife, which the prosecution alleged to be identical with one formerly in Sangret's possession. Dr. Simpson, pointing to a number of stab wounds on the skull, said it was impossible that these could have been sustained after the fracture. Dr. Simpson said he could not tell whether the girl had been expecting a baby. Sergeant Harold R. Wade said that sometime in September, Sangret reported the girl's disappearance and said that if she were found and anything had happened to her, he did not want to be mixed up in it. The hearing was adjourned. As the trial of Private Auguste Sangret entered its second day, the courtroom at Surrey Assizes was presented with stark physical evidence of the crime. Most grimly, the skull of Joan Pearl Wolfe, shown to the jury alongside a wooden stake and a clasp knife, believed to be the murder weapons. Dr. Keith Simpson, a leading pathologist, demonstrated how the deep fracture in the skull could have been caused by the stake, while stab wounds matched the blades of the knife. Hair clinging to the stake was found to match Joan's, further linking the objects to the crime scene. The prosecution, led by Mr. Eric Neve, KC, painted a picture of a passionate but volatile relationship between Sangret and Wolfe, one that spiraled into violence. Their shared life in a makeshift shelter or wigwam in the woods was romanticized by Wolfe in letters and scribbled inscriptions, one found in a cricket pavilion naming her Mrs. Sangret. But prosecutors alleged Sangret's feelings had shifted. Testimony suggested he wanted to distance himself from Wolfe, possibly because of her pregnancy or his interest in another woman. More than 40 witnesses were called, including soldiers who testified to Sangret's shifting affections and Wolfe's deteriorating emotional state. In an 80-page statement read to the court, Sangret admitted seeing Joan on September the 14th, the last day she was seen alive, but denied any involvement in her death. Although circumstantial, the case against him was tightening, with forensic and testimonial threads converging towards a damning conclusion. From the Surrey Advertiser, the 6th of March, 1943, soldier sentenced to death. The tragedy of the Wigwam Girl. Jury recommends mercy. In a hushed and crowded court at the Surrey Assizes, Kingston, on Tuesday, Sangret, the 29-year-old Canadian soldier of French Indian parentage, was sentenced to death by Mr. Justice McNagan for the murder at Hankley Common on Thursley last September of Joan Pearl Wolfe, whose home was at Tunbridge Wells. Jury arrived at their verdict which they accompanied with a strong recommendation to mercy after a retirement of 2 hours. The trial had lasted 5 days. Asked if he had anything to say why judgment of death should not be passed on him, Sangret, who for the first time throughout the trial showed some slight emotion, exclaimed, "I am not guilty, sir. I never killed that girl." Lived in shacks. On Monday, Sangret continued his evidence, which he had begun when the trial was adjourned on the previous Friday. He had told how he had met Joan Wolfe in Godalming in July, and how they became lovers and lived first in shacks or wigwams he had built in the woods, and then in Thursley Cricket Pavilion, where he declared he last saw her on the morning of September the 14th. Sangret said he wanted to marry Joan Wolfe and at no time had refused to do so. On the evening of September the 14th, he went to a public house with another soldier named Wells, and then went on to the pavilion expecting to see Joan, but she wasn't there. He waited 1.5 hours, calling her name. About a week after Wolfe had disappeared, he went to the cottage at Thursley of Miss Hayter, an elderly woman where Joan had once stayed, and asked if she was there. He told her that he was going to marry Joan, and that the woman replied that he could not be so because the girl had been married to another soldier named Francis, who had been sent back to Canada. Asked about a walk Wolfe had taken with an American soldier, Sangret said he did not like that very much because he was in love with Joan. Answering final questions from counsel, Sangret said he had never hit or harmed Joan Wolfe. The black-handled knife recovered from the guardroom washroom drain, and said to have been capable of causing the wounds on the girl's skull, had never been in his possession. In his final address to the jury, Mr. Neve repeated that the case was one of circumstantial evidence, but said that the finding of the black-handled knife in the drain must link up Sangret with the crime. In summing up, Mr. Justice McNaghan said, "It is a tragic case. The prisoner, a Canadian soldier who came from the far west of Canada to fight our common foe, is charged with the murder of a girl of 19.5 years, who, whatever may have been her real character, was young and had the hopes of a happy and good life before her." Referring to Sangret's meeting Joan with an American soldier, the judge said that the seeds of jealousy might have been sown then. He spoke of the poetic and religious side of Joan's character and the poetry she had written on the wall of the pavilion at Thursley. The jury took with them into their retiring room the girl's skull and the black-handled knife. On the 9th of March, an appeal was lodged on behalf of Auguste Sangret. The appeal was rejected. And on the 29th of April 1943, 29-year-old Auguste Sangret was hanged at Wandsworth Prison for the murder of Joan Pearl Wolfe, 19, the Wigwam Girl. Further particulars. Courts were not always grim, stern places of judgment. The county courts were often frequented for entertainment by the public, and more than one solicitor would use the court as a stage for humour, playing to the stragglers in court. Some judges, as well, had a reputation for acerbic wit. For this further particular segment, we introduce you to one of the more entertaining judges of his time, Lord Morris. From the Hampshire Telegraph on the 1st of December 1900, the judge scored, "It once fell to the lot of Lord Morris, always a wit and now a distinguished judge, who had never lost the metrophilous brogue of the west of Ireland, to hear a case at Coleraine in which damages were claimed from the veterinary surgeon for having poisoned a valuable horse. The issue depended upon whether a certain number of grains of a particular drug could be safely administered to the animal. The dispensary doctor proved that he had often given 8 grains to a man, from which it was said to be inferred that 12 for a horse was not excessive. "Never mind your 8 grains, doctor," said the judge. "We all know that some poisons are cumulative with effect, and you may go to the edge of ruin with impunity. But tell me this, the 12 grains, wouldn't they kill the devil himself if he swallowed them?" The doctor was annoyed and pompously replied, "I don't know, my lord. I have never had him as a patient." From the bench came the answer, "Ah, no, doctor, you never had. More's the pity. The old boy's still alive." And so concludes this melancholy stroll through the tangled thickets of Hankley Common. The tale told, the evidence aired, and Miss Wolfe at last remembered. If your sensibilities are soothed and your curiosity satisfied, do be so good as to leave behind a token of approval in the form of a like, a subscribe, or even a discreet share, perhaps to that friend who collects brass rubbings and always smells faintly of varnish. However, if you found the story disagreeable, distressing, or otherwise unsuited to your constitution, we recommend a bracing cup of tea, a long lie down, or simply blaming the entire ordeal on the cat. Your support, trivial though it may seem, serves to baffle and enrage that shadowy manipulator of men's fates and thumbnails, Mr. Algorithm, a dreadful sort, fond of metrics but short on soul. Confuse him, upset his charts, be the anomaly he never saw coming. If you find yourself longing for more scandal, soot, and subtle impropriety, unfiltered, ad-free, and updated daily, might we gently gesture in the direction of our humble Patreon? With over 600 documentaries tucked away, like scandalous love letters behind a library radiator, you'll find tales of crime, curiosity, and just the right amount of corset-induced drama. No pop-ups, no algorithms, just you, us, and the sweet scent of historical moral ambiguity. Link below. Best viewed by candlelight with something mildly intoxicating to hand. And for those of you who enjoy your intrigue with a side of nonsense and a suspiciously well-dressed hedgehog, do have a wander over to our blog at Robin & Co., updated with near daily scribbling, half-baked theories, and heroic misapplications of the semicolon. It's the sort of place where scandal and silliness cohabitate peacefully. We'd love to see you there, if only to prove to the internet that literary-minded misfits still walk amongst us. Links are lurking just below. Tap with caution or abandon. And now, dear patrons, we thank you for your time and invite you to join us next time for more crimes, curiosity, and other dark amusements from the foggy files of history. This has been News of the Times. I am Robin Coles, Inspector of Invisible Fences, ensuring they remain precisely where nobody can see them.